Tonight we're starting our series off with military and military families that choose to speak out and oppose the war in Iraq. I would like to start the introduction with Al Zapala. He is with Gold Star Family Speak Out, and he lost his son in Iraq. And Mary Hanna, whose son recently got back from serving a tour in Iraq. And Jeff Millard, who is the president of the D.C. Iraq Veterans Against the War. And Adam Kokesh, who is the national co-chair-elect of Iraq Veterans Against the War. And I'd like to start a little bit with Al. Could you just give a little bit of background and tell us just a little bit about your son and what, at what point did you decide to start speaking out?
Well, my son was in the Pennsylvania National Guard, and he was in the Pennsylvania National Guard since 1997. I was opposed to this war before the war started. So, you know, my opposition really came way before I knew that he was even going to be activated. Sherwood his enlistment was up in March of 2003. That was when we invaded Iraq. But then they put a stop loss on him.
Yeah, can you explain stop loss?
Stop loss is that they prevented him from leaving for 2 more years.
Isn't it supposed to be an all-volunteer army or military?
Well, yeah, he volunteered, and he volunteered for 6 years. And he went in 97. He was supposed to come out in 03, March of 03. But, you know, the fine print says that they can hold you for longer than that. And so they put a stop loss on him for 2 years. In March of, actually in January of 2004, he was activated, sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey. In March, he was deployed. Went to Kuwait first and then to Iraq. Sherwood was sent to Iraq to provide security for the Iraqi survey team that was supposedly looking for weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is already a year into the war. It's 4 months since the last of the inspectors had come back and said unequivocally that there were no weapons of mass destruction. When he was sent there in March, President Bush had a press ball. At a press ball, I don't know how many people remember this, but he started to look under the desk and different places and saying, where are those weapons of mass destruction? And him and his cronies all got a big laugh about that.
Actually, quite a bit of people in the media were there laughing.
Right. And that was the same month that Sherwood was sent to Iraq. 6 weeks later, he was guarding the perimeter as the inspectors moved into a warehouse. This was on April 26, 2004. There was an explosion. The debris from the explosion caused fatal head injuries, and he was killed.
So sorry.
Thank you.
And that leads Mary. Now, your son is an Iraq veteran,
Yes.
and he is actually something you were talking about, the stop loss, where he was actually just recently opposing the stop loss, trying to bring a light to that. Now, can you tell a little bit about what you went through with your son's deployment, and when did you decide, if at any point, if not always, to oppose the war and start speaking out about it?
Well, I'm this really naive person. When Bush is up there talking about weapons of mass destruction. We need to go into Iraq. I'm sitting there like not really knowing and feeling like I need to put my faith in my government. And I guess when Colin Powell stood up there and said we needed to go in, I thought, okay, I agree with them. We have to do that. I didn't want my son going in there. And I guess I just continually hoped that once Evan went in, well, it would be probably a year before he would get deployed to Iraq. He had to go through his training, and maybe the war would be over by then. But then we heard Bush, talking about the long war. And Evan was very pro-Bush, very patriotic. And I didn't feel like I could speak up at that time. Somehow I would be not supporting him where he was if I would speak up about it. So I just sat there saying nothing until he decided that what he saw and what was going on over there didn't fit with him. Then it freed me to sit there and say what I felt.
And when Al spoke about the fine print, and I guess one of your next crusades that you were talking about is actually challenging that contract.
I sat there a couple weeks ago and I read word for word Evan's entire contract. And
the military contract that he signs, all military signs before they enter in.
And in a conversation that I had, it was like, it's all spelled out. He signed it. What recourse does he have? But where else in America would someone be held to such a one-sided contract? And in this contract, it was like Al was saying, can the person ever be let out of the military? I mean, once you're in, they seem to have you forever. And I really want to speak up on that one. And whether it's my son or Al's son or if it's Adam or who it is, I mean, I don't think any of our young people should be subjected to such a contract.
And Jeff, same question. At what point did you not feel, after serving in Iraq, obviously with the National Guard and going over there, at what point did you decide that you needed to speak out against the war, and why?
Well, I went in the military, first of all, in 1998, in what in the military referred to as the Clinton years, back when it wasn't so cool to go into the military, back when it was something that you really made a choice to do. And I didn't have a recruiter approach me. I went in, talked to the recruiter. I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to serve my country. I was a combat engineer. I did have a combat MOS. It's a military occupational specialty. It's our job in the military. I then became an infantryman. I wanted to be on the front lines. That's what I wanted to do for the military. And after September 11th is really when I started to question things. One of my professors here at home...
So you're doing before September 11th?
Long before that, in 1998. And when September 11th happened, I was in the New York Army National Guard. We were actually at Ground Zero doing the security missions there at the World Trade Center site. And one of my professors over the phone asked me, how are you? And I said, I'm mad. I want to be at war. I'm a soldier. We should be at war. We were attacked. We go to war. Plain and simple. And he said, okay, I understand, but who do you want to go to war with? I couldn't answer that question. And it really made me think about the way things were. And when they started talking about Iraq, nothing made sense to me. Nothing about the war made sense. And when I was called and activated to go, it was actually past when my contract had ended. And I was under stop loss. And we keep referring to this military contract, and technically there is no contract for military. It is an enlistment agreement. A contract is between two sides. The enlistment agreement is between one side, and that is the only side that has to keep their bargain, and that side is the individual signing it. The military doesn't have to keep anything in it, and nowhere within this document will you ever find the word contract. It's referred to as an enlistment agreement. And I found that out because they said the entire unit is stop loss. And they told me you can go to Iraq under your stop loss, or you can go to Iraq with a $1,500 bonus. It's your choice, re-enlist or not. We don't care, you're going to Iraq. And at the time I had no context